Commander Alan Frost looked out of the ship's window at the blue and green planet below. Tarsus IV reminded him of Earth, but something about it made him uneasy. After 20 years of space exploration, he had learned to trust his instincts. Final. Systems check complete, Commander, said Engineer Samantha Powell from her station. The landing craft is ready. Alan nodded. Thank you, Powell. Is everyone else prepared? Dr. Olivia Kent looked up from her screens where she had been studying preliminary data on the planet's biology. As ready as I'll ever be. The plant and animal life readings are unusual. There's something about their cellular structure I've never seen before. Unusual how? Asked Jack Martinez, the security specialist. His hand rested near his weapon, a habit from years of expecting trouble. It's hard to explain, said Olivia. The organisms appear to share certain genetic markers across different species. It's like they're all distantly related, more so than on Earth. Peter Collins, the team's geologist, joined them at the window. The soil samples from our probe show rich minerals. This place could be perfect for the new colony if we greenlight it. Alan turned to face his team of 4 specialists. They were the best Earth had to offer, chosen specifically for the first human expedition to Tarsus IV. The planet had been discovered 3 years ago, but this was the first manned mission to its surface. Remember the mission, Alan said firmly. We have 2 months to determine if this planet is suitable for human settlement. We follow protocols, take no unnecessary risks, and report everything back to the EAS Discovery in orbit. The EAS Discovery was their home ship, waiting for them, in orbit around Tarsus IV with a crew of 30. If anything went wrong, the Discovery would be their only way home. The landing craft entered the atmosphere an hour later. The ride was rough. Strange air currents buffeted the small ship as they descended. This is weird, said Samantha, frowning at her instruments. The atmospheric patterns just shifted suddenly. It's like the air currents changed direction specifically around us. Can you compensate? Asked Alan, gripping his seat as the craft shook. Yes, but it's almost like... Never mind, it sounds crazy. Say it anyway. Samantha hesitated. It's almost like the atmosphere is trying to push us away. The craft landed in a small clearing surrounded by tall purple leaf trees. The gravity was slightly stronger than Earth's, making everyone feel heavier as they prepared to exit the ship. Suits on, everyone, ordered Alan. We stay in full environment suits until Dr. Kent confirms the air is safe. One by one, they stepped onto the surface of Tarsus IV. The ground was covered in a carpet of low blue vegetation that looked like grass, but had tiny blue flowers growing throughout. The sky was a deeper blue than Earth's, and 2 small moons were visible even in daylight. It's beautiful, whispered Olivia through her suit's communication system. Jack didn't share her enthusiasm. Spread out. Standard perimeter check. Collins, start your geological survey. Powell, set up the base camp modules. Dr. Kent, you're with me for initial biological samples. Alan nodded in approval. His team knew their jobs well. For the first few hours, everything went according to plan. The prefabricated base camp modules were deployed and connected, creating a small research station. Solar panels were unfolded to generate power, and communication equipment was set up to maintain contact with the Discovery. It was during the 3rd hour on the surface that things began to change. Commander, you need to see this, called Olivia, from where she was examining some plants 20 meters from the camp. Alan walked over to find her staring at a patch of the blue grass-like vegetation. As they watched, the plants were visibly growing, extending toward their boots. Is that normal? Asked Alan. No plant grows this fast naturally, said Olivia. And look, they're only growing toward us. The rest of the field is unchanged. Before Alan could respond, Jack's voice came urgently through their communications. Commander, the trees are releasing something. Alan and Olivia turned to see a cloud of purple spores ejecting from the towering trees at the edge of the clearing. The cloud moved against the wind, drifting directly toward the base camp. Everyone inside, now! Shouted Alan. They barely made it into the sealed modules before the purple cloud enveloped the camp. Through the transparent walls, they watched as the spores settled on their equipment outside. What is that stuff? Asked Samantha. Olivia was already analyzing a tiny sample she had managed to collect. It appears to be some kind of reproductive spore, but it contains compounds I don't recognize, potentially toxic. Toxic spores that target unknown visitors, said Peter. That's one hell of a coincidence. Alan frowned. Let's not jump to conclusions. That night, as the team reviewed their first day's findings, Peter made another discovery. The soil near our landing site is emitting low levels of radiation. Not immediately dangerous, but not normal either. Was it doing that when we landed? Asked Alan. No, said Peter, looking troubled. It started about an hour after we set up camp. The next morning brought new challenges. The equipment they had left outside was covered in a thin film of organic material. When Samantha tried to clean it off, she found that the substance had already begun eating into the metal. It's like some kind of acid, she said, showing Alan the damaged equipment. But it's only affecting our technology. It's not touching the natural materials. By midday, the team had cataloged several disturbing events: plants that grew toward them with unnatural speed, spores that targeted their camp, radiation that appeared after their arrival, and microorganisms that attacked their equipment. I think I understand what's happening, said Olivia that evening as they gathered in the main module. She displayed a series of microscopic images on the screen. These are cellular samples from different organisms we've encountered. The grass-like plants, the trees, the spores, and even the microbes attacking our equipment. They all contain identical cellular structures that shouldn't exist across different species. What does that mean? Asked Jack. It means they're connected somehow, said Olivia. It's as if they're all parts of a larger organism. The plants, the animals, maybe even the planet itself. They're all working together. Alan looked out the window at the alien landscape. Night was falling, and strange lights had begun to glow in the forest. You're saying the planet is alive? As one organism? Not exactly, said Olivia. But the ecosystem appears to function as a coordinated defense system rather than as independent organisms. And right now, that system sees us as a threat. As if to confirm her words, the ground trembled slightly beneath them. We're not just facing harsh conditions here, said Alan, his voice grim as he watched more purple spores begin to float from the forest toward their camp. We're facing an environment that actively wants us gone. The 5 humans looked at each other as understanding dawned. They hadn't come to an uninhabited planet ready for colonization. They had entered the territory of something ancient and aware, something that had already decided they didn't belong. Outside, the blue grass continued to grow toward their camp, the alien planet's first move in what would become a battle for survival. 1 week had passed since the team landed on Tarsus 4. The situation was getting worse each day. Commander Alan Frost stood at the edge of their camp, watching as the blue grass had grown nearly a meter tall around their modules. The grass moved, even when there was no wind, always leaning toward the humans whenever they stepped outside. Commander, we have a problem, called Engineer Samantha Powell from the communications module. Her voice was tense. Our signal to the Discovery is getting weaker. Alan walked over to her station and looked at the display. The signal that connected them to their ship in orbit was flickering. What's causing it? He asked. That's the strange part, said Samantha. The atmosphere above us is changing its electrical properties. It's like a storm is forming, but only directly above our location. As if on cue, the ground beneath them trembled. It was the 3rd small quake that day. Peter Collins, who had been analyzing soil samples, looked up with concern. These quakes are not natural. They're focused right underneath us, and they're getting stronger. Dr. Olivia Kent entered the module, carrying samples of the purple spores. Her eyes were wide with excitement and fear. You need to see this, she said, placing a container on the table. Inside, the purple spores were moving, forming patterns that changed every few seconds. I think they're communicating, she explained. These patterns match the electrical signals we've detected from those crystal formations we found yesterday. Security Specialist Jack Martinez frowned. Are you saying the spores are intelligent? Not individually, said Olivia. But as part of something larger, yes. It's like they're cells in a brain, carrying messages. Alan pointed to a map they had created of the surrounding area. Show me where you found these crystal formations again. Peter highlighted several spots on the map. Here, here, and here. They form a circle around our camp. They weren't visible in our initial scans from orbit, added Samantha. It's like they grew after we landed. A loud crash from outside interrupted their discussion. They rushed out to find one of their sensor arrays crushed under a fallen tree limb. Jack examined the break. This didn't fall naturally, it was broken off. See how the wood is twisted, not snapped? As they stood looking at the damage, Samantha suddenly shouted, "Look out!" and pushed Alan aside. A second later, a section of the ground where he had been standing collapsed, forming a small sinkhole. That wasn't there before, said Alan, his heart racing as he stared at the hole that would have swallowed him. This planet is actively trying to kill us, said Jack, his hand moving to his weapon. Back inside, they gathered to assess their situation. Their base camp had been damaged by the small quakes. Communication with the Discovery was becoming more difficult as the atmospheric disturbance grew. And most concerning, the local environment was showing signs of coordinated attacks against them. We need to understand what we're dealing with, said Alan. Dr. Kent, you believe these crystal formations are important? Olivia nodded. They might be some kind of neural network for the planet. If we can study them, we might learn how to communicate with whatever intelligence is coordinating these attacks. Or we might learn how to fight back, added Jack. The next morning, Alan organized an expedition to the nearest crystal formation. They moved carefully through the dense purple trees, watching for any sign of danger. The blue grass seemed to part before them, then close behind them as if tracking their movements. It's trying to trap us out here, whispered Jack, noticing how they were being surrounded by thicker vegetation. When they reached the crystal formation, they found it had grown significantly since their last visit. It now stood 3 meters, tall, glowing with a faint inner light. Its surface was covered in patterns that shifted and changed. Samantha set up equipment to record the electrical signals coming from the crystal. These patterns are definitely some form of communication, she said. They changed as soon as we arrived, like it knows we're here. Olivia took samples from around the base of the crystal. The soil here is different. It's full of microscopic organisms I haven't seen before. As she worked, a new sound filled the air, a high-pitched hum that seemed to come from the crystal itself. The team covered their ears as the sound grew louder. "We need to leave," shouted Alan over the noise. As they turned to go, Jack fell to his knees, pointing ahead. A section of the forest floor was moving. The blue grass parted to reveal a creature they hadn't seen before, a large, slug-like animal with multiple eyes along its body. It wasn't alone. More emerged from the ground around them. "Back to the camp now," ordered Alan. They ran, the strange creatures following slowly but persistently. The trees seemed to bend toward them, dropping more purple spores that clung to their suits. They barely made it back to the relative safety of their camp. Once inside, they removed their suits carefully, checking for any breach in the material. "Those creatures weren't in any of our scans," said Olivia, still catching her breath. "It's like they were created specifically to confront us." That night, as the team tried to rest, Alan found himself unable to sleep. Through the window, he could see the forest glowing with strange lights. The crystal formations in the distance pulsed in unison. In his half-asleep state, Alan felt a presence, vast and ancient, observing them with cold curiosity. It was as if the planet itself was watching, learning, and planning. When morning came, Alan discovered strange markings on his skin, patterns that matched those on the crystals. When he showed the others, they found the same markings on themselves. "It's in our heads somehow," said Peter, looking frightened for the first time. "While we were sleeping, it was studying us." Samantha checked their equipment and made a disturbing discovery. "Our technology is what's triggering it," she said. "When we power down systems, the attacks lessen. When we use certain devices, they intensify. It sees our technology as a threat." concluded Alan. Like an infection it needs to eliminate. Olivia studied the skin patterns more closely. These aren't just random. They look like DNA sequences, human DNA. It's not just attacking us. It's trying to understand what we are. The ground shook again, harder this time. Cracks appeared in the walls of their modules. Outside, the blue grass had grown tall enough to reach their windows, pressing against the transparent material like fingers trying to get in. "We can't stay here," said Alan. "The base camp is too exposed, and the planet knows exactly where we—" Jack pointed to a map. "There's a cave system about 2 kilometers from here. If we can reach it, the rock might shield us from whatever senses our presence. Pack only what we absolutely need," ordered Alan. "Low-tech equipment when possible. If it's our technology that's triggering the planet, we need to be more careful about what we use." As they prepared to abandon their base camp, Alan looked at his team. They were frightened but determined. They had come to Tarsus 4 as explorers, hoping to find a new home for humanity. Instead, they had awakened an ancient planetary consciousness that saw them as invaders. Their mission had changed. They were no longer exploring. They were surviving. And the true battle against the alien planet was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since landing on Tarsus 4. The team now lived in the cave system Jack had found. The entrance was hidden behind a waterfall that poured from the rocks above, creating a natural shield. Inside, the caves stretched deep into the mountain, offering multiple chambers and escape routes. Engineer Samantha Powell had used their remaining equipment to create a defensive perimeter around the cave entrance. She designed it to use as little power as possible, hoping to avoid attracting the planet's attention. "The good news is that we seem to be safer here," she told Commander Alan Frost as they checked the sensors. "The stone blocks whatever signals the planet uses to track us." Alan nodded. Though they were safer, they were far from safe. Every time they ventured outside to gather food or water, they faced new dangers. The blue grass had grown into tall, razor-sharp blades that cut through their protective clothing. The purple trees now dropped their branches like spears when humans passed beneath them. Inside the main cave chamber, Dr. Olivia Kent was studying samples under their portable microscope. She looked up as Alan and Samantha returned. "I've made a discovery," she said. "The microbes in the water and food have been trying to enter our bodies, but our immune systems are fighting them off." "So the planet is trying to infect us?" asked Jack Martinez, who was cleaning his weapon nearby. "Yes, but it's not working," said Olivia, her eyes bright with excitement. "Our bodies evolved on Earth, another death world. We're more resilient than the planet expected." Peter Collins sat against the cave wall, his legs still healing from the injury he received when the cliff collapsed. "So Earth, being a harsh planet, is actually helping us survive here?" "Exactly," said Olivia. "Human immune systems are incredibly strong compared to most species in the galaxy. We've evolved to fight off countless pathogens. The microbes here have never encountered anything like us before." For the first time in weeks, Alan felt a glimmer of hope. "So we have an advantage." "We have several," said Samantha. "I've noticed. The planet's attacks intensify when we use certain technologies, but decrease when we rely on manual methods." She showed them a series of simple tools she had created: a water filter made from layers of cloth and charcoal, a spear for hunting that looked like a natural branch, cooking stones that absorbed the heat from their smallest power source. "These don't trigger the same response from the planet," she explained. "I think Tarsus 4 recognizes our advanced technology as artificial and threatening, but these simpler tools mimic natural processes." That night, they established a rotation system. 2 people would stay awake while the others rested. When it was Alan's turn to sleep, he dreamed of a vast consciousness watching him. It felt ancient and curious, studying him like a scientist might study a new bacteria. Alan woke with a start, the strange markings on his skin glowing faintly in the dark cave. The patterns had changed again, becoming more complex. Everyone's markings had evolved differently, as if the planet was running separate experiments on each of them. "It's learning from us," Alan told the others at their morning meeting, "and we need to learn from it too." Over the next days, they began testing their new theories. Jack developed a hunting technique that used minimal movement, allowing him to approach the local wildlife without triggering defense responses. Peter, despite his injury, discovered that certain rocks disrupted the planet's signals when placed in specific patterns. Most importantly, Olivia found that some of the local microorganisms had changed after contact with humans. They had absorbed human DNA and created hybrids that the planet's defenses didn't recognize as threats. "Look at this," she said, showing Alan a sample of water from a small pool near their cave. Tiny organisms swam in the liquid, their movements different from those they had seen before. "These have been altered by contact with us. They're part human now at the cellular level." "Is that dangerous?" asked Alan. "Just the opposite," said Olivia. "The planet doesn't attack them because it doesn't recognize them as foreign. They're camouflaged." This discovery gave Samantha an idea. She began working on a paste made from these hybrid microorganisms that could be spread on their tools and clothing, making them less detectable to the planet's senses. One morning, Alan woke to find Peter examining his leg with surprise. The wound that had been healing slowly for weeks looked significantly better. "The hybrid microbes," said Peter. "I put some on my bandage yesterday and look, the healing has accelerated." They began using the hybrid paste on all their injuries. Cuts and bruises that would normally take days to heal now improved overnight. Their bodies were adapting to Tarsus 4, just as some of Tarsus 4 was adapting to them. Despite these small victories, communication with the EAS discovery remained impossible. The ship in orbit would be growing concerned by their lack of contact. Soon the Discovery might send down a rescue team, not knowing they would be walking into danger. "We need to find a way to contact the ship," said Alan. "Warn them about the planet's defenses." Samantha had been working on a communication device that used very low power and mimicked natural electrical patterns found in the local wildlife. "If we can get to higher ground, away from the forest's interference, we might be able to send a simple message." The team prepared for an expedition to the mountain peak above their cave system. They covered themselves in the hybrid paste, carried only the simplest tools, and moved with the careful patterns Jack had developed to minimize the planet's awareness of them. As they climbed higher, they noticed the planet's vegetation thinning. The bluegrass became shorter, the purple trees smaller and less aggressive. Above a certain altitude, the direct influence of the planetary consciousness seemed to weaken. "It's focusing its energy on the areas where it thinks will try to settle," suggested Olivia. "The habitable zones." When they reached a flat area near the peak, Samantha set up her communication device. It was simple, just a few components, arranged in a way that looked almost natural, like a strange rock formation. She activated it with a small crystal that glowed softly. "Now we wait," she said. "If the Discovery is overhead, they might pick up our signal." As they waited, Alan looked down at the vast forests and plains of Tarsus 4 spreading below them. From this height, he could see patterns in the landscape that weren't visible from the ground. The forests and rivers formed shapes that seemed too regular to be natural, like a giant circuit board built into the planet itself. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "Terrifying, but beautiful." Beside him, Olivia nodded. "It's a masterpiece of evolution, a planetary organism that developed intelligence to protect itself. From things like us," added Jack. "Maybe," said Alan. "Or maybe from something worse, that came before us." As the sun set, casting red light across the alien landscape, Alan realized something important. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were engaged in a dialogue with Tarsus 4, a complicated, dangerous conversation between two forms of life that had never been meant to meet. And somehow, against all odds, the Deathworlders from Earth were holding their own. 2 months after landing on Tarsus 4, the team had established a routine. They moved with the planet's rhythms, recognizing patterns that signaled danger and finding ways to avoid the worst attacks. Their cave home was now well equipped with simple tools that didn't trigger the planet's defenses. Their signal from the mountain had reached the AS Discovery. The ship sent a message back saying they would remain in orbit and wait for the team to solve the planet's situation before sending any rescue. Commander Alan Frost sat at the cave entrance, watching the sun rise over the alien landscape. The strange markings on his skin had faded slightly, but they still changed patterns occasionally, especially when he slept. "Coffee?" asked Jack Martinez, sitting down beside him and offering a cup of hot liquid that wasn't really coffee, but a local plant. That tasted similar. "Thanks," said Alan, taking the cup. "Any trouble during your watch?" "Just the usual," said Jack. The crystal formations around the cave grew another few inches. They're getting closer. The large crystal formations they had discovered earlier had been spreading across the planet. New ones appeared regularly, creating a network that pulsed with energy. Olivia believed these were like nerve centers for the planetary consciousness. Dr. Olivia Kent emerged from the deeper part of the cave, excitement on her face. "I've done it," she announced. "I've created a compound that might blind the planet to our presence temporarily." She showed them a green paste in a small container. "It combines the hybrid microorganisms with minerals Peter found deep in the cave. Together they create a signal-blocking effect." "How do we test it?" asked Alan. "I need someone to take it to one of the major crystal nodes," said Olivia. "Someone who can move quietly and react quickly if things go wrong." Jack stood up. "I'll go. I've been mapping the crystal network for weeks. I know which one would be the best target." While Jack prepared for his mission, engineer Samantha Powell showed Alan her latest creation. Sensors that could be attached to the crystal nodes to interpret the electrical signals passing through them. "If Jack can place these on the crystal, we might be able to understand how the planet communicates," she explained. "Maybe even learn to communicate with it." Jack left at midday, his body covered in Olivia's green paste. The others watched through binoculars as he moved carefully through the forest, using the movement patterns they had developed to minimize detection. Hours passed with no sign of Jack. As the sun began to set, Alan grew worried. He was about to organize a search party when Jack appeared at the cave entrance, breathing hard but smiling. "It worked," he said between breaths. "The paste blocked the planet's awareness. I got close enough to place the sensors on the main crystal node." Samantha immediately checked her receiver. Data was flowing in, complex patterns of energy and information from the crystal network. "This is amazing," she said, studying the readings. "The crystals aren't just communication nodes, they're memory storage. The planet is recording everything." Over the next few days, Samantha and Olivia worked together to decipher the data from the crystal network. What they discovered was astonishing. "Tarsus 4 has encountered other intelligent species before," Olivia told the others during their evening meal. "The memory patterns show at least 5 different types of visitors over millions of years." "What happened to them?" asked Peter Collins, who had fully recovered from his leg injury. Samantha's face was grim. "The planet destroyed them all. Its entire ecosystem evolved as a defense system against technological species." Alan frowned. "It sees any technological species as a threat?" "As parasites," corrected Olivia. "Species that would use its resources and potentially damage its systems. From the planet's perspective, technological civilizations are like diseases that need to be eliminated." The next day, a violent storm formed suddenly above their location. Lightning struck repeatedly near the cave entrance, and winds tore at the forest below. It was the strongest attack the planet had launched in weeks. "The sensors," realized Samantha. "It found them, and now knows we're gathering information." They retreated deeper into the cave system as water began to flood the entrance. The storm lasted for hours, forcing them to move their camp to a higher chamber. When the storm finally ended, Alan ventured out alone to survey the damage. As he climbed down a narrow path, a section of rock gave way beneath him. He fell, sliding, down a steep slope into darkness. When he regained consciousness, Alan found himself in a chamber he had never seen before. The walls glowed with embedded crystals, illuminating a scene that made his blood run cold. The chamber was filled with fossilized remains of various alien species, previous visitors to Tarsus 4. Some looked humanoid, while others had entirely different body structures. Among the remains were fragments of technology far more advanced than anything humans had created. "They were more advanced than us," Alan whispered to himself, examining a device that still faintly glowed after what Must have been thousands of years. And the planet still defeated them. He gathered several small artifacts and began searching for a way back to the surface. A narrow tunnel led upward, eventually connecting to a part of their cave system. When Alan showed the others what he had found, Samantha examined the alien technology with wonder. These power systems are incredible. They don't use electricity as we understand it. Olivia studied the fossilized remains. Different biology, but the same fate. The planet targeted them all. Peter pointed to markings on one of the artifacts. These symbols appear in the same patterns as the crystal network signals. I think these visitors were trying to communicate with the planet too. As they discussed the implications of their discovery, Samantha continued deciphering the crystal network data. Her face grew increasingly troubled. The planet doesn't just react, she finally said, it learns. Each time it encounters a new species, it analyzes their defenses and develops countermeasures. It's been perfecting its strategies for millions of years. That explains why its attacks keep changing, said Jack. When one approach fails, it tries something new. Alan placed the alien artifacts on their makeshift table. These species had technology we can barely understand, and they still failed. What chance do we have? The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Then Olivia spoke. They failed because they fought against the planet, she said slowly. What if we tried something different? What if we tried to communicate instead of just defending ourselves? Communicate with a planet that wants to kill us? Asked Jack skeptically. It wants to kill what it perceives as a threat, corrected Olivia. What if we could show it we're not a threat? The idea was radical, but it sparked a new direction for their efforts. If they couldn't defeat Tarsus IV through resistance, perhaps they could survive through understanding. Alan looked at the alien remains, then at his team, tired but unbowed after 2 months of struggle against an entire planet. They had survived where other, more advanced species had perished. Perhaps, just perhaps, the Deathworlders from Earth had something to offer that those others had lacked. We came here to decide if Tarsus IV was suitable for human colonization, said Alan. But now we face a bigger question. Are we suitable for Tarsus IV? 3 months had passed on Tarsus IV. The team had made their boldest decision yet. They would attempt direct communication with the planet's consciousness. They gathered in the main cave chamber, surrounded by equipment that Samantha and Olivia had built using their knowledge of the crystal network. This is how it will work, explained Olivia, showing them a clear liquid in 5 small containers. This solution contains the hybrid microorganisms that carry both human DNA and Tarsian genetic material. When we drink it, it should create a temporary biological link to the planet's communication system. You want us to drink alien microbes? Asked Jack Martinez, looking doubtful. They're part human now, Olivia reminded him. Our tests show they're safe. They'll connect our nervous systems to the crystal network for a short time. And if it works? Asked Peter Collins. We'll be able to send thoughts and images directly into the planetary consciousness, said Samantha Powell. A true dialogue, instead of just reacting to each other. Commander Alan Frost picked up one of the containers. I'll go first, he said. If anything goes wrong, the rest of you don't follow. Before anyone could object, Alan drank the liquid. It tasted bitter, but not unpleasant. For a few moments, nothing happened. Then the markings on his skin began to glow brightly, and Alan gasped as his mind filled with alien sensations. Colors he had never seen before flooded his vision. Sounds beyond human hearing range echoed in his head. He felt himself expanding, connecting to something vast and ancient that stretched across the entire planet. Alan, Olivia's voice seemed distant. Can you hear me? Alan nodded slowly, struggling to maintain his human perspective while connected to the planetary mind. It's overwhelming, he whispered. So much information. Seeing that Alan was still conscious and coherent, the others drank their solutions as well. One by one, they connected to the planet's consciousness, their markings glowing in harmony with the crystal formations. The initial contact was chaotic and painful. Waves of alien perceptions crashed against their human minds. But Commander Frost drawing on his military training, maintained focus through the mental assault and established a primitive dialogue. "It's so old," gasped Peter. "Billions of years of awareness." "It's afraid," added Olivia, tears streaming down her face. "It remembers pain. Something hurt it long ago." Through the connection, they began to understand. Tarsus 4 had once been home to its own technological civilization, billions of years in the past. That civilization had damaged the planet severely, through exploitation and pollution, nearly destroying all life. In response, the surviving organisms had evolved into a single defensive system, determined to prevent such harm from ever happening again. Every technological species that had landed on Tarsus 4 since then had been treated as a potential repeat of that ancient trauma. The planet had developed increasingly sophisticated defenses, eliminating each infection before it could spread. "We need to show it we're different," said Alan, struggling to form coherent thoughts through the overwhelming connection. Together, they focused their minds, sharing images and memories of Earth, not just its beauty but also its scars. They showed how humans had damaged their home planet, but were learning to heal it. They shared knowledge of restoration projects, of forests regrown and waters cleansed. The planetary consciousness recoiled at first, the cave shaking around them as it rejected their message. But they persisted, showing more examples of human resilience and adaptation. Olivia shared her knowledge of biology, of how life forms could help each other through symbiosis rather than simply competing. Samantha shared visions of technology that worked with natural systems rather than against them. Peter offered images of geological harmony, of structures built to enhance rather than damage the land. Jack, surprisingly, provided the most compelling vision. Earth soldiers who had once fought against each other now working together to protect endangered environments. The concept of defenders choosing to protect rather than destroy resonated with the planetary consciousness. Alan brought their message together, showing how humans from Earth, another death world, understood struggle and survival, but had learned that cooperation often succeeded where conflict failed. Slowly, the violent resistance from the planet began to ease. The shaking stopped. Outside the cave, the wind died down. The aggressive movements of the plants and animals stilled. In return, the planet shared its own story, not in words, but in powerful sensory impressions that burned into their minds. They felt the pain of ancient devastation, the slow rebuilding of a wounded world, the constant vigilance against new threats. "It's been alone," whispered Olivia, conscious but unable to speak to anyone who could understand. As their connection deepened, a new possibility emerged. Not conquest, not destruction, but partnership. Humans would not try to reshape Tarsus 4 against its nature. Instead, they would learn to live within its systems, and perhaps help heal some of its ancient wounds. When the connection finally faded, the 5 humans sat in silence, processing what they had experienced. Outside the cave, they could hear the sounds of the forest changing, not the threatening movements from before, but a gentler rhythm. Samantha was the first to stand. "We should check outside," she said. Her skin markings still glowed faintly, but the patterns had changed again, now matching the natural flow patterns of rivers and wind on Tarsus 4. They walked to the cave entrance together. The landscape that greeted them was transformed. The razor-sharp blue grass had softened. The purple trees no longer bent threateningly toward them but swayed with the natural breeze. The crystal formations glowed with a steady, peaceful light. "It worked," said Peter in amazement. "It's not attacking anymore." "Not attacking," corrected Olivia, "but still watching. This is just the beginning of understanding each other." In the days that followed, they ventured farther from the cave, testing the new relationship. The planet's organisms observed them, but no longer coordinated attacks. The weather remained stable. Even the radiation levels in the soil diminished. A week later, they detected a ship entering the atmosphere. Reinforcements from the EAS Discovery, who had grown concerned by their limited communication. The newcomers arrived expecting to find casualties or worse. Instead, they found the original team alive and working on something unprecedented. "Don't use your weapons or advanced technology yet," Alan warned the new arrivals. We need to introduce you to the planet properly." The captain of the reinforcement team looked confused. "Introduce us to a planet?" "To a conscious planet," corrected Olivia. "One that's cautiously agreed to talk instead of fight." Over the following weeks, the team worked to establish reliable communication protocols between humans and Tarsus 4. They developed simplified versions of the biological interface that allowed limited contact without the overwhelming immersion of their first attempt. Many of the team members, including Alan, decided to remain on Tarsus 4 as permanent ambassadors. They would study the planet and serve as intermediaries for any future human contact. "The Earth Alliance won't be happy about losing a potential colony," said Jack as they watched the reinforcement ship depart with news of their discovery. "They're not losing a colony," said Alan. "They're gaining an ally, if we do this right." Olivia looked out at the transformed landscape. "We came here as invaders in the planet's view. Now we have the chance to be something else entirely. The first species to make peace with Tarsus 4 instead of being destroyed by it," said Samantha. Alan smiled as he felt the gentle mental touch of the planetary consciousness at the edge of his awareness. Curious, cautious, but no longer hostile. The Deathworlders from Earth had accomplished something no other visitors to this planet had managed. They had shown that sometimes understanding was a greater strength than conquest. That was the true victory of the Deathworlders.